Yo, what's up? I'm going to be showing you how I made this. It's like a DSBM melodic black metal X kind of like Shay rage type beat. Sort of Ken Carson as well, but it's still pretty melodic. So I'll get into it. A few things. Number one, to make this kind of stuff, you kind of do have to know how to play guitar a little bit. At least how to tremolo pick and where the chords are, where some of your notes are, some basic chord progressions and scale shapes. I'm not using anything fancy for the guitar gear. As you can see, my mixer routing, I use the Bogren MLC amps, the MLC 093 and then the MLC Sub-Zero 100. Both work really well. So to start off with the intro, usually I make the intros to these kinds of beats first. And I usually start with a riff. So in this case, it was this riff right here. So that's really distorted stuff. What I have going on that chain, I have two, and one of them is run through a Saturn that just makes it really lo-fi. And then I have two EQs just to cut some frequencies and raise some frequencies. And then I have another one that just has reverb on it. Without all those effects, it sounds just like this. So it's a pretty basic, just really distorted tremolo picked guitar tone. And I'm just going, I think, 3-2, 3-2, and then some other stuff that's like a half step apart. But it's a super simple melody. And then the chords under, I have guitars going like this. And then I have some other guitars that are playing different voicings of those chords. I labeled them as clean. They're not really clean. They're just less distorted. And on the cabinet or amping section, I have it so that there's more room, more ambience basically. So it sounds like the mic is further away from where the guitar is being recorded. Of course, it's in the amp sim, but it sounds like this. So they're playing slightly different things. You can't really hear it in the final mix, though. It kind of all blends together. And then I have a bass going like this. I think it's just the root notes tremolo picked. Yes, that's just the root notes. Super basic bass tone. Nothing going on there. Then I have a blast beat right here. The drums on this, I think they're Crim. They're in Contact. They're the Crim drums. These are super good drums, especially for the money, and they're really well mixed. I have some mixing going on here, but not really that much. Like I have a bus compressor and a little tape saturator, and then a few drum strips and EQs and stuff, but the Crim drums or the Cult drums are another one I use. Super good for this style. And I use different MIDI, like Loudstack MIDI, and the Crim comes with some MIDI. It's good to just use those to learn how these drum grooves work. If you listen to a lot of black metal, you'll kind of figure out how these different grooves and drum beats work so you can make them later on. But it's good to use real drummers MIDI. And then in this second part, I just have these strings going, like they're basically just playing the chords. And then they go an octave up. So So that's exactly what the rhythm guitars are playing. I have a roll right here. And then the chord progression, I think, changes right here. So that's going like 6, 7, 1, 2, 1, or 6, 7, 1, 3, 1. And then I have these two guitar harmonies going on. And I have it's basically a carpet roll right here. So altogether it sounds like this. And the next part is super important for these kinds of beats. It's the transition between the more black metal part and then the more rage or rap part. So the best way to do this is just to make the drums more sparse. So you can see right here, the drums are a lot more sparse. They're a lot more calm. And you heard it in the preview as well. The bass, like the bass guitar gets taken out, and then I put a synth bass in. And then I start to introduce some of these synth sounds. So I'll just play this section, and then I'll show you. And I don't have a ton of effects. I don't have any like transitions or anything. If I was doing a finished song, I'd put a lot of transitions and little ear candy and stuff, but that's not super important, and I feel like everyone knows how to do that. So for the intro chords, I think it's just 6, 7, 1. So super basic pattern. I basically just have it going, but then I have these little bridge notes in between, and a lot of them are on where there's half step gaps, so that just makes it a little bit darker. And then the synth is just playing a few notes from that, but not all of them. So another super simple pattern. Usually when you make these, it's good to just see where it's kind of like drawing in a picture. So seeing how the pattern is going. I have this recurring motif right here where it's kind of like a pedal tone, and then this just gets brought up whole step each time. And then I have these hits. I think they're from Xenology. And I really like that sound. It's just really vintage and cool. And then a synth bass as well. And this 6, 7, 1 progression is really OP, especially for these kinds of, like the epic part of the song. It feels like it's building towards something. This is in D sharp minor. Any guitar players know if you play a half step down, that means your lowest string is going to be a D sharp. So that's just a really easy key to write in on guitar, because you can use that lowest string. And a lot of the time when you memorize scale shapes, you're just used to knowing the like D sharp minor pentatonic scale shape. So I'll get into the next part of the beat, which is this first section right here. So I'll play that. So this is a really nice chord progression. I really like this because it's super melodic. It's not too dark or anything. If I can find it, let me see. Here, I'll just play this. Here's a MIDI right here. It's following a pretty basic, it's kind of going from the 1 to the 6 to the 7. Again, if you play guitar, if you know about Iron Maiden or any of those bands, they use like 1, 6, 7, 1 all the time. So that means we have the 1 right here, the 6 right here and the 7 here, which is a leading tone back into the tonic. So that's just always going to sound really good. And the synth is basically doing the same thing as before. It's just... it's just different. So originally these two were back there in the pre-verse. And then I have some hits. I think they're just playing where the 808 is. And using these 90s hits like this, they're kind of anachronistic, so they sound really cool for these more modern beats. It gives it a good flavor. And then I have the drums right here I'll play. I don't know where I got any of these drums from. I think I downloaded some random kit off Reddit and used them. It's a pretty basic drum patterns going on here. This virtual riot snare sounds like this. It gives it a lot of character. I have a lot of snare rolls going on as well. That just gives it a lot more character. And then the hi-hats look like this. There's just a few rolls here and there. I know hi-hat rolls are kind of out of fashion right now, but I think it still can add a lot to it, especially in these beats where you want it to keep the momentum. A lot of the time the momentum is in the drums, and it's in like keeping hi-hat rolls really consistent. So it's super important to bring that stuff in and just make it sound a lot less boring. And if you notice, a lot of these sounds are pretty low key. I mean, they're loud just because I mix it loud, but they're not super plucky or crazy. And that's because I also have these guitars going on following the chords. So all together. And then right here, this left hand harmony guitar, it's just playing a different voicing of the D sharp minor chord. It's playing like a high triad, so that's what this is. And it's making it suspended a few times. And that sounds really abrasive when it's just in a beat, but when you mix it in with vocals and stuff, you don't really notice that it's only panned to the left. It just sounds really good and full and cool. So I also brought in this pattern right here. So, I mean, that's nothing. I mean, that's just kind of random stuff going on. This is from Serum. Most of these sounds are from like Florency kits, Sunboy kits. This hit, you can find it in Xenology. This bass, I think it's like a Prod Clueless bass. You know, a lot of these sounds are pretty simple, like Rage synth sounds. It's just about how you mix them with the guitar, because you can't really go too crazy. A lot of the like Osama Sun type beats, they're layering a shit ton of sounds on top of one another, and that's cool and that works for that. But for this application, if you do that too much, it's just going to sound like a mess. It already kind of does sound like a mess, and that's cool. But if you do that too much, the guitar takes a lot of the EQ frequency spectrum. So like it's a very full sounding instrument. Even when you make it thin, it's still very loud and full. So you have to be careful about how many sounds you're using, how many leads are going on top of stuff, and how distorted your sounds are, or else it's just going to sound like shit. Because that's why I like to use kicks in these kinds of beats, because if you don't use kicks, you basically get no transients. And I think that having no transients in something like this can just make it blend together a lot. So I'll get into the pre-chorus right here. So what I did is I just brought that main riff back in. So something super important for these kinds of beats, as I'm sure you've already seen, is the arrangement. So you're not just getting one pattern and splitting it by channel. You really have to pay attention to the song progression. You have to have an intro and a pre-chorus, a verse. There's not necessarily like a chorus section in the song. The riff functions more as the chorus. But a really useful thing is to have an initial riff, and this is going for 16 bars, and then have this little transitional part right here, and then I have the rap part here, and then slowly it becomes more into a rock song again, and then I have that initial riff, but it's only going for 8 bars. So that riff is kind of like, it functions like the chorus, so you don't need anyone singing over that. And when you bring it back after that first verse, it's kind of like, okay, this is like a real song. And then we go into sort of a generic tremolo pick black metal part right here. Go back into another verse, but I think this time the chords are an octave up. The drums are basically the same. The hi-hats are less busy this time because I like to change the hi-hats up on the second verse. And then we have I think it's a more simple lead right here. Yeah, it's like a 2 Hollis type lead. It just keeps the momentum up. So if you see these drum patterns right here, they're like skank drum patterns. This one not so much, it's kind of just snare rolls, but this one is definitely a skank pattern. So if you see the snares on the like 1, that's like a build up drum pattern. If you're into EDM, you can think of that as like a build up into a drop type of drum pattern. So that works really well to bring it back into the rap part as well. And if you notice, I have a lot of drum fills right here, and that's going to make the transition into the rap part a lot smoother. So this part is pretty simple. It's just the rap part with the guitars pan left and right. And then right here, because you need a transition, the hard part about this is balancing both sounds. So what I did here is I kept some of the trap drums, but then I also put real drums as well where the kick and 808 would be. So that is just giving it a lot more room. It's bringing all the elements of the sound together, and then I also have the like real bass playing the bass lines. It's not tremolo picking it though, so that's just giving it a lot more room. And then the outro is super nice. Instead of having the lead guitar play the riff, I have it on a violin, so that just makes it a really epic, memorable outro, and it changes how you perceive it, so you're hearing it on a different instrument. So that's really cool. So I'll play that. These snare rolls are from an X Japan song. I mean, not snare rolls, tom rolls. This is like drum MIDI from an X Japan song called Silent Jealousy. So if you have a drum part you really like on one of your favorite songs, just try to see if there's MIDI of it. And I edited it some and made it a little different, but it's a drum part. They're not going to really care. And And this outro part, all these strings I think are from the Roland JV. This is SRX Orchestra, the solo violin. And then these are SRX spiccato strings. Super basic stuff here. This sounds really intricate, but it's not really. It's kind of just following the chords, following the like the synth MIDI from before. So it's not super crazy. If you layer these orchestral sounds, it's super impressive, but it's really not complicated at all. It's really easy to do. And I just keep the guitars playing for this part. I'm not super happy with the outro of this. I think I could have done it better, but I think this part right here is super strong. So a few other notes about this. When I'm making this stuff, you can see all the guitars are recorded in like 4-bit chunks. So I do not record all this in one take at all. But for the video, I had to save on CPU, so I just consolidated everything, which is why the mix kind of sounds different in this as opposed to what you heard in the preview. So the main thing to keep in mind when you're doing this stuff is arrangement. The arrangement and the song structure in this is everything. I mean, you live and die by it. This is like a pretty simple song as far as my like black metal rage. That sounds really stupid, but you understand what I mean. As far as that kind of stuff goes, this is arranged pretty simple. It basically starts with the chorus, has a chorus in the middle, and then a different chorus in the end, but the chorus is a riff. So that's like one songwriting idea, but you kind of have to get familiar with like A part, B part, C part, using a lot of different chord progressions, not just building vertically in a pattern, splitting it, and then that's your arrangement. You need to build more horizontally. So writing all these different parts sort of bespoke to what you want and only bringing things back when you really need to. So I kind of went probably too far with like all these different patterns in the second verse. Like I definitely could have just reused this stuff, but I just think it's fun to do more. But the key to this style is balance. You really need to balance everything, and you can't just have a rock part into a rap part into a rock part. You need to have a few of these little bridge parts where you have a little bit of both happening at the same time. That's really what's going to separate it, is if you can blend these two sounds together. And it's really not that hard with black metal. It's pretty hard with like thrash and stuff because it's more rhythmic, but black metal is all on like 16th notes and 8th notes, so it's not super bad. You have to blend this stuff together. Just put a bass in, put some chords in from Serum. I mean, these are Serum presets that everyone has. And these drums, I mean, they're super basic. This 808's kind of funny, but like, you can use any 808 really for this kind of thing. I think it's better to have ones that are a little more distorted with more low end and longer tails, but that's more of a personal preference. So that's just some stuff to take away from this. If you want to make beats like this, listen to Odium, listen to Emperor. Those two bands really taught me a lot about arranging in black metal and having a lot of interesting ideas. They're more symphonic, and this is a lot more symphonic as well, and they're more complex with their arrangements. You also have to keep in mind when making this stuff, mixing is going to be more intensive. So you can see I have a whole, I have a template on FL Studio that I made for this kind of stuff. You're going to have all your guitars pan left and right, bass, and you have to put riders and stuff. You have to separately route all your drums, which I know a lot of people aren't used to, at least for the acoustic drums. And then the mastering, you have to be really careful to not make it too loud, because with all these guitars playing, it's super easy to get it too loud. I may make a video about how to make this kind of stuff with fake guitars, because you can do that. I have like a sound font and some context stuff where you can use it, but it's way harder because the black metal style is very much about being messy, and tremolo picking is a super messy kind of thing, and you can tell when it's done by a robot, it just sounds weird. So that's the tutorial. I hope you liked it. I hope you learned something from it. This is kind of a new style I've been working on of beats, and I have songs as well. Maybe I'll show how I made the songs, but I think this is kind of a new progressive way that I hope more rap goes to. So that's it. Thank you for watching.